and Greg and Richard right here on Talking Red.
You ever see something so short you think it was a prank? Ange at Forest, 39 days. I mean, Ange didn't even get to finish his Tesco meal deal before he got the boot. Sandwich, crisps, and a P45. Even my free trial at Disney Plus ran longer. The poor guy probably still had Google Maps open to find the training ground. The milk in the fridge was like, bro, I've got a sell-by date longer than that. I'm surprised Forest fans even had time to get angry. Usually we're burning effigies by week 6. This time, most were still Googling how to pronounce his name. In a reign that was shorter than the time it takes to explain VAR to your dad, Evangelos Marinakis acted swiftly and ruthlessly within 19 minutes of the final whistle of Forest's 3-0 home defeat to Chelsea to bring an end to the failed experiment of Big Ange at Forest. The shortest reign of any manager in Premier League history. I mean, I've had hangovers that have outlasted that man's Forest managerial career. It was so short, Netflix called it a limited series. Even Liz Truss has just texted me. She said, he's made Heaven Earl look stable. Welcome to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast, hosted by myself, Greg Oram. On the panel, we've got Steve Battlemuch, Ross Taylor, and Jamie Tatler. In amongst this episode, there is a 3-0 defeat to talk about, and we're going to reflect upon that. But the main story is, of course, the sacking of Ange and who the next guy through the door might be.
I guess from my perspective, I just don't fit. Not here, just in general.
As the Nottingham Forest owner, Evangelos Marinakis, the only man in the City ground today who knows exactly what the circumstances are with the manager. Away from Nico Williams and gets the cross in and Chelsea lead. It's taken by Neto and it's 2-0. And in the blink of an eye, it's double trouble for Nottingham Forest. The owner's seat is empty, ominously empty.
Well, that hasn't taken long, has it? 19 minutes after the full-time whistle went at the City ground and the club have moved, and they've moved quickly because Ange Postecoglou has been sacked. It's a very short statement.
That we need to dust ourselves down. Whatever the club do moving forward, they've got the full backing from us players in the dressing room, that is for sure. Like I say, it's down to us players more than ever to do everything we can on the training pitch and on starting Thursday night to go and get a result.
So there we go. The intro kind of taking us through the events of yesterday, which means that Forest are now searching for their third manager of the season. I think the first Premier League club in history of the Premier League to sack 2 managers before November. So, again, the records are piling up. Good evening, Ross. Good evening, Jamie. Good evening, Steve. We've got a lot to get through. So I'll say proper hellos to you as we go round, etc., etc. If you're in the comments, please do let us know that you are here. We want to give shout outs and touch on some of the comments you make. Go ahead, please. Like, subscribe, follow us on all the socials. And by all means, give us a 5-star review if you can on the likes of Apple or Spotify. That would be lovely. Okay, then. So we're here to talk about Chelsea, the match that is. And I want to get into that with you guys as well, because I think it's important that we kind of digest a bit of what we saw. Ultimately, it led to the 3-0 defeat. So we know that in the end, it wasn't great. But Ross, I'll come to you first, right? So we're going to get into the Ange conversation for definite and who might be coming in to replace him. And there's already comments coming in, asking questions and so forth. I promise you guys we will get to that. But let's just kind of concentrate on the game itself, because this is our usual after-match review episode. Team selection, Ross. I mean, he threw a curveball in there with Taiwo Awoniyi. I thought his Forest career was dead and buried. In the spirit of looking at the team selection, was that a huge surprise to you? And just give us your thoughts generally on how the game unfolded.
Yeah, there were a few surprises in there for sure. Taiwo being on the list was the one that lit up pretty much every chat that everyone was on. I think the defensive 5 was kind of somewhat logical against Neto and Garnacho. I think there was no kind of major qualms about that. But just looking at it, it felt like Ange had made the call that he thought that Taiwo would give him the best 45 to 60 minutes of what he had available, which was very, very surprising. And I know that Chris Wood picked up an injury. Jesus has travelled. Who knows where Callum Wendo is? So, Taiwo gets the nod. Most importantly, he's got previous with us. I'm glad he didn't become the fall guy for what has become, this disaster class of the last few weeks. But ultimately, he gave us a half, and we were in the game in that half. And what went after that was obviously what we'll get to. But it was a surprising selection for sure. But I think it's just a byproduct of Ange having a better insight as to who had the most kind of readiness at that point in time.
It looked like he wanted to bring in Taiwo, having worked with him on the training pitch, Jamie, for the couple of weeks, with Woods coming back from international duty with a knock of sorts, and Jesus had been playing for Brazil. I think they were over in Korea, Japan, playing their games there. So, look, we won't dwell too much on Taiwo. How did you think he did? And what did you make of the first half? Because it was looking really promising, wasn't it?
I thought Taiwo did surprisingly well. He'd not started a game since April. So that's a huge ask for him to come in and start from the first minute, I think. Taking him off at half-time was interesting because if he's only fit enough to do 45, then he's probably not fit enough to start. And I think it's, knowing you're going to make a change that early is going to be kind of disruptive, which I think we saw in the second half, and we didn't start strongly. The first half was good. We saw glimpses again of what Ange's vision, what was supposed to be, only glimpses of it without really creating too much. But it's just such a fragile way of playing football. You can be perfect for 44 and a half minutes, but then just one misplaced pass, whatever, and you can just get carved through. And I think that was always the worry with Ange ball. And I think the first half, kind of without Chelsea really threatening us, you just knew that we were only ever one moment away from doing something at the back, which just threw all the momentum out the door.
Yeah, Ange obviously was up against it, and we'll talk about the whys and wherefores of even giving him the game, I guess, as well, because if it was all going to be based on this result, why even give him the game? That'll be a question that you guys can chip in with now. Steve Battlemuch is with us, but I know he's got camera issues. I put him back into the studio, but I think Steve, I'm not sure if you can hear me, Steve, or not. Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you, Greg. I just can't see myself.
That's all right. Steve's with us. I think, Steve, you were at the match. Is that correct?
Yeah, same as Ross was saying. I was in the NAV pre-match, and obviously the team news gets read out at the NAV, and there was a big intake of breath when Taiwo's name was mentioned. But not only that, the bench seemed, 5 at the back, and the bench seemed very defensive. And you had £130 million worth of talent, not even in the matchday squad. So I think there was, what on earth is he playing at? Is he just trying to not lose the game? What have these lads done to not even make the squad, some of them? Now, I know we've got a big squad, so somebody's going to miss out, but he did seem a very, very strange selection. That said, you go into the game and we had chances. I think we had chances from their mistakes rather than necessarily from our great play. But we had chances, but Taiwo put one wide after 3-4 minutes, and then Morgan missed the target after 10 minutes. And really, we should have been 2 up.
I think so too.
That Morgan chance, Steve, was the Taiwo chance. You just wonder if that went to a striker that was a little bit less rusty. Does he at least hit the target rather than dragging it harmlessly wide? And that's the risk you play when you put a striker in from the first minute who's not started a game for 6 months or whatever it's been.
100%. There's an argument for that for sure. But on the chances, guys, because football is about goals. It's an obvious thing to say. And Ange will look back at his time, potentially, as Forest fans will, when they look at 8 games and no wins. But ultimately, it's been a case of we just haven't been able to score goals. And goals obviously change games. They change the way the opposition approach you. They change the intensity in the match. They change the attitude from the crowd, which can have effect on players. Goals change games. Early goals, get a goal here, go 2 up, and all the rest of it. And you can see how the momentum swings. And when you don't take your chances, as Forest have failed to do, not just in the match versus Chelsea, but in the game against Sunderland, in the game against Midtjylland, Betis away, chance after chance has just gone begging. And I just don't understand the reason why that is. And yesterday, going back to Chelsea, Elliot Anderson, why doesn't he shoot? I don't understand. I think he is the best footballer we've had at the club since Roy Keane in terms of a midfield player. I just don't understand why he doesn't shoot, Ross, because he's got so much up his sleeve as a footballer, but his finishing is woeful because he should have just hit it first time on the left foot, but he tried to drag it back and we lost the opportunity. And if we get him firing, then I think Forest play well. But he's almost trying to do too much on his own too many times. So, what's your view on the chances that we're missing? And can you even begin to kind of suggest the reason why that might be?
Yeah, there's a few things. First up, I won't call out Anderson for doing anything wrong ever, because his choices.
We are allowed to, right? We are allowed to a little bit.
We are, but Uli Maradona made his own choice, and that is to turn inside because it was more likely the shot was going to get blocked. So had he hit the shot and he got blocked, he gone for a corner, we might have been like, why didn't he cut inside? He's skillful enough, he could have been composed, and. So I'm less concerned about that. I think in aggregate, the chances we had in the first half were more by Chelsea's poor play and just sloppiness, giving us the ball away. And, Taiwo set up Morgan for a great chance. I think the Taiwo chance, if you look back to the Liverpool goal that Wood scored last season, not dissimilar, where Wood goes in on his left and then fires it bottom corner. So we had an opportunity there. Maybe an in-fit form striker scores that. But my theory in whole with Ange was we created a lot of 6 out of 10 chances, but we weren't very efficient with them. Whereby under Nuno Ball, maybe we were creating 8 out of 10 chances and we were really high and efficient with them and converting them. And, it just kind of bred a lot of huff and puff. And frankly, I'm quite happy to be moved past it. But I thought the best chance we had was Morgan's. I actually felt that Chelsea's chance, Santos' chance, was better than Morgan's, and in the same half. And that's the reason Morgan is only 4th or 5th choice number 10 for England. He has got to score. And that was the one that if we'd have got the first goal, gone in at half-time, who knows? We could have been maybe the team that finished 3-0, and maybe we've been talking about getting behind Ange for a little bit longer. Who knows?
Yeah, I'd argue that, and whilst agreeing with you that Forest's chances in the first half, by and large, were as a result of Chelsea's poor play, mispassing. I agree with that. We were also, as a team, set up in a different way. So we were on the press. So the forward line was ready to pounce. So I do believe that the press and the pressure from the attackers that Ange had set them up did enable those Chelsea mistakes to a certain degree. I'm not saying they were solely responsible for it, but I want to try and give him a bit of credit and give the players on the pitch a bit of credit for maybe influencing Chelsea to mispass and fumble it a little bit. But you're right. I mean, Morgan should have scored. Even the Douglas Luiz header that came back 30 seconds later, that header was just miscontrolled, Jamie. And I mean, there was the Anderson chance. I thought there was the Taiwo chance. I mean, it is really a case of the fine margins that I've mentioned about, and we've talked about many, many times before. So if they're misfiring, why is that? I mean, I know Ross talks about 6 out of 10 chances. I think maybe on average you could argue that's the case, but I think also, Jamie, there's been some 9 out of 10 chances gone missing as well. Have you got any kind of idea as to why that might be?
I agree with Ross. We have a lot more shots, so we had a lot more shots under Ange than we would have under Nuno, but the quality of chance overall wasn't as strong. I think with Anderson yesterday, just picking on the 3 examples you gave, he just looked leggy. Like 9 times out of 10, he cuts that back onto his right and he slots it in, but he just looked tired, and he'd done 290 minutes he played for England, so that's not really a surprise. Mm-hmm. The Taiwo one we talked about, he's rusty, and that's what you get for putting a rusty striker in in from the start that they probably will miss the first chance. And Morgan, it's a shame really, because it's really surprising how bad he is at shooting for such a technical player. Like his passing, his ball control, his ability is so high that it's really shocking that he's so poor at shooting from any kind of distance. Really, he's pretty consistently missing targets from that sort of distance. So I don't think we missed any sitters. I think we had a few, you might call them half chances, all come about by Chelsea's mistakes that we did influence. I agree, Greg. But it's not like we missed sitters last time. And you talk about fine margins, and it is fine margins, but I would argue that 8 games is a large enough sample size that you can't just kind of blame us falling on the wrong side of fine margins anymore. Like there's obviously fundamental issues somewhere that mean we're not just getting unlucky time after time by not taking these chances. There's issues behind the scenes, under the surface, whatever you want to call it, where the squad are just out of confidence. It's tough to pin it down to one thing, I think.
I think you're right. And I think fundamentally, we need to look at the defence as well, which we will talk about in a moment. But firstly, good afternoon, gents from Bruce. That's an afternoon from Texas, because he's another one of our USA fans, as is Steph. She says, hey, guys, looking forward to your perspective. Thanks for joining us, Steph, in Wigginton over in Canada. Says, afternoon, boys. Russ Yates wants to know, do we think that because nothing has been announced quickly, that Dyche is less likely and it means Mancini or Silva? Hold your fire on that, Russ Yates, because we are going to come to the question about new managers very soon. Good evening to Richard Ottaway and Binit Patel. Good to have you as well. Dr. Anna, good evening to you as always. Binit says on the Morgan Gibbs White front that he's fallen off badly, and it is sad to see. I agree with you, Binit, and I agree with what's been said. I'd be shocked if he goes to the World Cup, if I'm honest with you. His form is that bad. I think he was fortunate to be in the last England squad. I don't say that with joy. I'm a huge Morgan Gibbs White fan, but the drop-off is noticeable, and that's something that really needs to be addressed. In terms of defence, Steve Battlemuch, that is really where we also need to focus our attention, because, forwards not putting the ball in the back of the net is one thing, but all of a sudden we've gone from watertight at set pieces to the worst again, and that's going to really hurt us in the long run if it doesn't get fixed. How important is it now that Forest make the correct call when it comes to the next manager in terms of defence, do you think?
Well, I think it's crucial, not only defence, but the whole style and pattern of play, really, and an ethos about what the team's about, which we had under Cooper and we had under Nuno. Now, I'm sure Ange and his supporters would say 8 games isn't enough, but in those 8 games, he's tried 3 or 4 different styles in 8 games, and he's not stuck with just one of them. He's chopped and changed, and none of them have worked. Apart from 30 minutes in Betis, none of those worked. And in his defence, no Ola Reina, which means we've got Zinchenko, who I think people like on the board as a passer, but he's not a left back, is he? Let's be honest. He's out of position all the time in those crucial situations. Murillo's missed half the games. He was back yesterday, but clearly, yesterday was back as part of a back 3. So I think there's just confusion across the whole of the squad. What's their role? Last year it was very clear: Milenkovic and Murillo, heart of the defence. Ola and Nico bombing up the wings, getting back. And I think whoever comes in, and I'm sure we'll get on to that, but whoever comes in has to start from some solidity at the back, but then also using the attacking players that we were crying out for, that we didn't have as cover last year. And then we get them in, and none of them started the game, and 4 of them weren't even in the squad. So, I think it's that whole ethos that's got to be addressed with the new appointment. And, we've got to get it right, but we've also got to get somebody in. I think we've got to get somebody in tomorrow morning to take training. I don't think we can faff about any longer.
When it comes to the players that we brought in, Ross, Steve's absolutely spot on, as he usually is. McAtee, Hutchinson, Bakwa, Kalimuendo. I mean, firstly, I'll interrupt myself and say we've got a lot of players and we've got a deep squad. Not everyone can be included in a match day squad, right? We're going to have players that sit things out. And obviously, when you get suspensions and injuries, it makes the manager's job potentially a little bit easier in terms of a headache. But ultimately, you've got decisions to make. But for all this talk about Ange ball, Ross, and for all this talk about attacking style and so on, he's gone to 3 at the back, which I didn't really think was an Ange thing. He's putting defenders on the bench as well in the form of Jay Cunha ready to come in and Savona ready to come in. And that attacking threat that we got, I mean, Domingos was on the bench, as was Yates, in your midfield, kind of, they're not really what you call attacking threat, are they? So it's what must they be thinking? I think that's the question I'm trying to ask. What must they be thinking? I'm sure that Amari Hutchinson is kicking himself thinking, I wish I'd never gone to Nottingham Forest, because the poor kid can't get a kick. Are we in danger of, well, not I say danger, is it potential that we might have a bit of a shake-up in January, do you reckon? Player-wise, that is.
I mean, very much so. I think if I was those players, I'd be thinking, what clown car have I just gotten into? I mean, it is a little bit bizarre. I think Ange seemed somewhat confused by his own philosophy. I think if you look at some of the ways we set ourselves up, it wasn't kind of the archetypal gung-ho Ange ball. And I think also what really is confusing to me, especially with Hutchinson, with his absence in Europe, is why wouldn't you just maximize his use in the Premier League? Like, it's to not even be in the matchday squad. I mean, I don't know their condition. I don't know their mental state. They're otherwise loading life.
All 4 in the building, we think, through the international break as well. Do you know what I mean? I don't think any of them went away with international duty as well.
So even more so, and I think it's such a misnomer that we're like, oh, Ange had these 2 weeks or this extra week to work with the players on international break. Well, most of them were off. Most of the core players were off. The others were coming back conditioning. What he has was the best of the rest, and then he chose to pick a few of them. And it's like, okay, well, if you genuinely had some time to exert your philosophy, so to speak, use those players who are back home as your champions for that. So there was an opportunity there where he could have just gone with the quote-unquote freshest legs in the room and not leave them behind. So, yeah, Hutchinson is our max signing, like 37 million. Like, what are we doing? I mean, the questions have to be asked of the recruitment team if they feel he's a bust. And if he's not, get him the minutes. Like, it's got to be one or the other. We can't just leave him in the wilderness.
No, and we can't play him on Thursday. He's like you just alluded to. He can't play on Thursday against Porto. What are you thinking, Jamie, when it comes to Forest and their habit of capitulation? Because it feels like when we concede 1 goal, we're conceding another goal very, very quickly. It happened against Midtjylland. It's happened in many Forest guises over the years, and it's happened again yesterday when we concede the goal from the cross, and then I think within 3 or 4 minutes we're 2-0 down. Is that symptomatic as well of where the mindset with these players is, do you think?
Yeah, 100%. Like I described it earlier on as a fragile way of playing football, and I think that's exactly what it is. Like, it's fragile mentally, it's fragile positionally, it requires everything to go right all the way through the game, basically, because you couldn't imagine an Ange team playing like backs to wall football like we played a lot of last season. Like, they're just never going to be able to do that. So it required everything to go right. And if it didn't go right and we conceded first, then I think the players probably knew that we were very unlikely, and the crowd knew we're very unlikely to win that game. So at that point, floodgates open and mentalities shift and all of those things. So it doesn't surprise me. The good news is everyone's got a clean slate. So these players that have been left out of matchday squads, these players that haven't made an impact after big money transfers through the summer, whoever comes in is going to give them all a clean slate. And that's the best thing that could have happened for all of them. I think that's an additional benefit of the process we're going to go through now, is that not only will we have fresh ideas brought to the squad and new tactics and all those things, but the players will get a fresh start, and the fans will have a fresh start with the new manager as well.
Steve is going to leave us very soon because he's been invited on to Sky Sports or Sky News in Australia to give comment on Ange. So, Steve, just before you go, I mean, we had chances after we went 2-0 down. Igor Jesus, how he missed, I don't know, and we were putting pressure on them. So it was encouraging that there was still fight in the team. There was still something there. I mean, do you think that the players in the end really did give everything for Ange?
I think when you look at the effort that people like Nico Williams, Elliot Anderson, in particular, to me, those two stand out as people who never leave an inch on the field. You know, they are absolutely done at the end of the game. And, you know, I think they did try. I think there was, like I said earlier, confusion about what the style of play was meant to be and what they were meant to be and what positions. But goals give confidence, don't they? And, you know, you could see that when we got those 2 goals quickly in Betis, that suddenly we're passing the ball around. We look, you know, the best we've been for a couple of years. You know, that chance Nico had yesterday, you know, if that had gone in, can you imagine 2-2 to 2-1, Trent End, what the roar would have been, but he snatched it a bit, went over the top. And, you know, I really felt for Nico because, you know, he really deserves something like that. And he got on our goal at Burnley, didn't he? So, I mean, I think confidence is a great thing. We get the appointment right this week. We get the City Ground rocking on Thursday. We get a draw. We get a win. I tell you, this club could take off again, no problem.
100%. All right, Steve. Well, look, I know you're going to disappear and do your interview. If you have got time to pop back in, please feel free to do so. Richard Spray, my co-host, is in the comments. So he's just finished a choir performance with one of his daughters, which is why he wasn't able to be here. But Richard, if you're still around, I mean, he might hop on if he's got time. We might see Richard after all. Ian Wigginton says he's starting to wonder whether we should have took the Spurs money for Morgan. That's a thought I had in my head as well. Bennett is questioning Matt Sells, great keeper, but devoid of confidence. He thinks maybe he could have done better on all 3 goals. Maybe not the first one, because I thought that really was a point-blank header that most keepers are going to struggle to save. I felt you're right on the free kick from Pedro Neto. It was Pedro Neto, wasn't it?
It was Neto, yeah.
He got a hand that could have done better. And he flapped for the third. He was shit for that. I'll give you that. Again, I mean, last season's Golden Glove winner and this year, like the rest of them, underperforming. Having said that, there have been games that he has still made some excellent saves. So, you know, maybe there's still chance and time to turn him around. And on those chances after we went 2-0 down, I think the Igor Jesus chance for me was the 9 out of 10 chance that should have been put away. I think the way that came over. The Nico one, maybe a different player, a striker would have buried that. I watched the Man United game earlier and Salah had something similar from a different angle that he put wide, but his form seems like that's gone in the bin at the moment as well. But football is a funny old game, you know, because these players that we lauded last season, chaps, were scoring goals out of almost nothing. I mean, Chris Wood's XG was ridiculous. The goals that he scored, 20 in total from an XG of something like 13. And he can't hit a barn door either. There's plenty to work with for the next manager that does come into Nottingham Forest. Just finally on the game then, Mr. Marinakis leaves his seat. I think it was after the second goal went in, around 60, 66 minutes or something like that. And then everyone is saying, well, he's gone and he's making a phone call and kind of scoffed at that. I thought, well, of course he's not. But then the full-time whistle comes and within 18, 19 minutes, Ross Taylor, and it surprised me. It was brutal, but maybe it shouldn't be so surprising because this is Marinakis. We get the tweet that's released and everyone's seen it, Forest Park ways with Ange. When that news broke so quickly after full time, where were you at? Did you? I think maybe you were in the camp that it had to happen, but did you even think that maybe that was a bit of a wince moment, a bit quick?
Not really, no. I mean, it's been a conflicting couple of months for many Forest fans, myself included. Like tactically yesterday, we always want our team to win. Strategically, I felt like I wasn't that bothered, and that's awful. And once it had happened, I'm like, okay, let's get this thing done. And, you know, in any industry, if your boss walks out a meeting 2/3 of the way through, that's not really a good sign, is it?
No.
In any walk of life. So it didn't surprise me. And we can't have it both ways. We can't be like, oh, 39 days wasn't long enough, or it was the fastest ever, and, but then also say, well, we could have done it 2 weeks ago. I think those of us who felt like 3 days before he was announced, it was the wrong decision, are the same people who are right now sat there thinking it was never going to work after day 9, yet alone 39. So at least it's done, and we have to activate. And we have to activate under the assumption that we are in trouble. I'm nervous about a sense of, I don't want to use the word entitlement, but there is a lot of grit and fire in a lot of other teams above us. And we need to get that year 1, year 2 grit and fire back, because we could fall. I mean, I was old enough to remember the quote unquote too good to go down early 90s Forest team under Clough, ironically, who used to also wear a white pinstripe red shirt. And that's part of the reason I don't like the current jersey. We are not too good to go down. Like, we have to activate some wins. This time last year, we went on a run of 11 wins out of 13. If we can get half of that in the next 11 games, we'll be back on track. But we have to be realistic. Last year, we overperformed. A lot of the players overperformed. They're above their own average. They're below their own average right now. And we need to get them back to average, because otherwise we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Thank you. I love the way you put things sometimes. The boss leaving a meeting 2/3 of the way through kind of almost just sums it up, strikes the right chord, strikes the right tone, and helps you to digest it in many ways, in a different way. So thank you for that. If you are just joining us, welcome along to Talking Reds, a Nottingham Forest podcast. We are discussing Nottingham Forest defeat to Chelsea. We've more or less wrapped up that part of this episode. We are going to be talking more about Ange Postecoglou's sacking and who the next man through the door might be. I see many coming in to the chat, to the comments. Wolfie has kindly pulled the plug, or pushed the button, I should say, on an FFTV raid as well once they finish their stream. So if you're joining us from that stream that's just finished, welcome along to Talking Reds. I'm with Ross Taylor and Jamie Tatler. Jamie, you were with us a week or so ago for one of our special episodes, the one with, and it was so great to have you and to meet you. And you made a comment that I really found interesting, which was that you felt that Ange was underqualified to get the Forest job. And I think you even said he was probably underqualified to get the Spurs job in the first place, along those lines. And I found that really interesting. It really riled up our Australian viewers. There were some tasty comments on YouTube. They didn't like it. A lot of them have left now. Now he's been sacked. Our subscribers are tanking. So if you haven't subscribed yet, folks, I need you to counter the Aussies that have legged it and hop on board, because we're going to be talking all things Forest. So Jamie, I know that you weren't a fan of Ange, and it's happened, and I think you wanted it to happen as soon as possible. It should never happen in the first place. So for you, from your point of view, was yesterday's calamity, because I think it did become a calamity in the end, was that avoidable? And should he have been sacked literally after Newcastle?
Yeah. If Marinakis had decided that unless we beat a top 4 team yesterday, then he was going to sack the manager, then that to me is that we shouldn't have waited as long as that, because that's not a performance plan. You're going back to Ross's work analogy. That's not a realistic performance plan to put somebody on for the long term, right? So like if we're at that level where if you don't beat a top 4 team like Chelsea, the current club world champions, you're out the door, then let's use that 2 weeks and let's prepare properly and bring in another manager in that time who's got more chance to work with the squad that's not on international duty. So yeah, doesn't surprise me that we did it that way, but it's disappointing. I think that we didn't act more swiftly and more decisively a couple of weeks ago when the writing was on the wall. I think we all knew it. We all knew it was a matter of time. Whether it was Chelsea, whether it was Porto, whether it was Bournemouth, it was going to happen pretty quickly. And we've probably squandered a couple of weeks that we could have built some good value from with a new manager with some time with the squad.
Indeed, and we're going to now talk about those potential candidates and who it might be. So the name Sean Dyche has been circulating for a week to 10 days. On Sean Dyche, some have said, yes, he's exactly what we need. He knows the club. He can bring stone and wone. All that kind of romantic side of things comes into play, as well as the fact he lives in the city. It's a job that he clearly covets. I think we can all tell that. And he will bring a defensiveness that we need. Some would have argued, or some have argued, we're not quite at Dyche time yet. That was maybe a week or so ago. Some might have swung into that. I think you know what, we are at Dyche time now. So we know what he would bring, and we know that he's in the conversation. The one that came out last night was a bit of a surprise to me, which is Roberto Mancini, the former Manchester City manager, won the Premier League with them as well. Remember, was the Italy manager when they beat England in the Euros at Wembley. Hasn't had a club job from what I've read for 6 or 7 years, I think, and has been in Saudi Arabia and all that kind of stuff. So I just don't know about Mancini. So I'll be interested to hear what the boys have got to say on him, and let us know in the comments, guys, who you want to be the next Forest manager, who you think it should be. And then the other name I'm going to mention is Marco Silva, the Fulham manager. And I posed a question on X quite deliberately this morning, where I said, look, you know, can someone please make a case for Marco Silva? Because to be honest with you, I wasn't quite really getting it. And the reason why I said that was because I don't know. I think it was because I was looking at his time at Hull, Watford and Everton, and not really being too, you know, impressed with that. And he's been at Fulham, I think, for 4 years, came in, stabilised them in the Championship, took them up when we came up with them, and has turned them into a settled Premier League side, some might say. But still, I kind of looked at him and thought, well, I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure that Marco Silva is what we need. And I interrupt myself to say Richard Spray has now joined us. How you doing, Richard? You okay?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Sorry, jumping from a family event to this. So appreciate you guys. And Greg, hair looks beautiful.
I know.
Beard looks beautiful.
It'll come off tonight. I was just saying about Marco Silva. And so Rob Dorset, I'll put this on the screen. He tweeted something earlier. He said Dyche is still the front runner to be the new Forest boss, and the terms of his contract not expected to be a problem if Marinakis says yay. Mancini and Marco Silva still in frame. The issue with Silva is compensation. Forest hadn't budgeted for sacking 2 managers in 1 season, so PSR is a real factor. And then also just quickly, this one as well. Now, Jack Kelly is a well-respected Fulham journalist. Our good friend Matt Druitt, the architect, who is a Talking Reds team member, he's a Fulham fan, you guys will know. He pointed us in the direction of what Jack had to say. Jack on Twitter said, according to a report from A Bola is a Portuguese news outlet, by the way. So according to the report from A Bola, negotiations are now very advanced between Nottingham Forest and Marco Silva. Evangelos Marinakis is apparently willing to pay the 15 million euros release clause. Silva, though, hasn't given any certainty yet, but apparently is open to negotiations. So what do we know? What can we say, Richard? I'll come to you because you've just joined us. And obviously, Richard and I went live just before 3 yesterday to give our knee-jerk reaction to the Ange sacking. So you can go back and watch that to get our instant reaction to Ange being sacked. But on the new manager coming in now, Richard, I mean, you know, you've heard what Rob's got to say and Jack Kelly, those 2 guys. You've read, I'm sure, everything that we've all read. Every Forest fan has been on X, has been in the newspapers, has been trying to get any information they can. Where are you at now in terms of the next manager coming into Nottingham Forest? I know that you are still quite keen on Sean Dyche. I think you were going into that kind of swing in that way. But now Marco Silva has become, by all accounts, a genuine possibility to bring in now. Where are you at?
I mean, I think that would be ideal. I think he checks the boxes. He certainly is acutely aware of how Marinakis operates and the kind of personality that he operates under, being at Olympiacos so previously. So I think, and the pressure that's required from him to be a winning club. You know, Marinakis obviously has a lot of faith and belief in the history of his clubs. In particular, he's talked about that with Forest, and so he wants to reinvigorate that. He wants that to come back, and it sort of has in a way with Europa, but starting to dissipate again. I would love Silva. I think that would be fantastic. Is it viable? I still contend that it seems a little bit less likely, just simply because of the logistics of that. Not even just the money. I think there's, comments being thrown in there like Brucey's like, just sell Taiwo for 15 million pounds. I mean, maybe that's why. Maybe Ange did us a favor, put him out on display that says maybe he still has something left in the tank to try to sell him. I don't know, but I'm still wondering about that selection. But I'm not as worried about the money side of it. I mean, yes, it is a concern given how much we've spent. So you've got to accumulate all of those things and factor all of that into the equation. But I think it's just the logistics of getting him out of that contract and coming in. I mean, he's hovering not too far above us in the table. He didn't get the support he wanted, similar to what Nuno was frustrated with, but I think he brings a good balance of, tactics and a little bit more progressive football. Yeah, I mean, he'd be great. I think he seems like he would do a good job in the dressing room. So that would be a fantastic opportunity. I just still think it's a little bit unlikely, just simply because of all those things that you have to manage. But I'm not going to be upset with Dyche. I think there's aspects to what he does that we need right now. And I think Ross said it earlier, that grit and that determination, that fire, that unwillingness to capitulate, I guess, for lack of a better word, that is something that we desperately need back, because that was a calling card of certainly in the first half of the season. I think Ross also said something about, the stretch of games that we won. We were converting at a ridiculous rate in terms of our, playing above our XG, but you know what, that's what you come to expect from someone like Chris Wood. And I just think that the performance level of Morgan too was better in that stretch. And we need to get back him to firing all cylinders, because he's clearly not, he's lost confidence, and we need a manager who can come in. I think Adam Somerton said it on Force Focus yesterday. They need to be able to manage and rebuild some of the belief in that dressing room, because I think they believe in each other, and that's why they were playing so hard. They're playing for each other. They're playing for the city. They're playing for the badge, even if they're not playing for Ange. And they'll continue to do that, but it's how that all kind of results on the pitch into wins, into points, and that's just where things are. But yeah, I love Silva. I still feel that nagging doubt that that's a likelihood, and it feels more like a summer situation. But again, I don't know how willing Dyche is. There's some rumors about him not accepting the contract link, so could be problematic there too. But anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much to Wayway NFFC. He says FFTV raid, and we know that happened, but he also chucked £2 into the pot. Thank you, Mark. It's appreciated. Richard Spray is flying into the UK in just under a week's time, and will be at the NAV alongside myself and some of the team for the Man United game. So if you'd like to add to the pot, please go ahead and hit the dollar button and give us a couple of your hard-earned pounds, and I can buy Richard a Red Bull because he doesn't drink. But by all means,
I'll probably need it though.
You can support us just by liking and subscribing. That would be absolutely perfect as well. Ross, where are you on the new manager? Dyche, Silva, Roberto Mancini, does he float your boat? Is there another name that you'd like to mention?
I mean, Mancini doesn't float my boat per se. I mean, he's got gravitas for sure, but I think that might just be because I love watching Football Italia in the 90s as a kid. So I've probably drawn more to him as a player than a manager. I have to admit, I oscillate between panic mode and we'll be fine. And if it's a will be fine, then Silva's probably the better long-term choice. But I think we are in panic mode, frankly. I think we've sprayed the ball off the tee and we don't know where it is. And we need somebody to get us back on track. And I feel that's Dyche. I feel like we have to get the basics right, earn the right to get a point in a game, let alone points, and just start from scratch. Because I look above us in the table, and yeah, there's probably 3, 4, 5 teams we should comfortably say we're better than. But Leicester have said that and gone down. And other teams have said that and gone down, especially when they've been distracted on all fronts with Europe. So I'm okay. Batten down the hatches, Dyche bus, park the bus if needed. Do not get relegated.
Indeed, do not get relegated. Binnett, thank you so much for your $4.99 or £5. We called it £5. Really appreciate that. I was kind of tongue in cheek a little bit, but I appreciate you dipping your hand in your pocket and giving us a contribution. Steve is back with us from his Australia interview. I'll get to that in a moment, Steve. And your camera's on so we can see you now. Jamie, who is qualified to become the next Nottingham Forest manager in your opinion?
Mark, I said Marco Silva last week when you asked me before Ange had even been sacked. I think his I think his CV is excellent. The football he plays with Fulham is closer in style to Nuno, but it is definitely more progressive than Nuno's. The way I think the profile of player we have will fit his style really well. I think players like Murillo will really benefit from it. His centre backs split really wide, and they kind of spray these progressive balls up to high fullbacks. Like I could see that working excellently with Murillo and Nico, and he improves players as well. You know, look at someone like Alex Iwobi and what he's turned him into during his time at Fulham. So there's definitely like a coach in there that can take players on a level. So I think he would be the optimal choice. He can also manage up to Marinakis, and that shouldn't be, the importance of that shouldn't be overlooked, because the last thing we need is another personality clash behind the scenes that got us in this mess in the first place with Nuno and Edu. So somebody that's able to manage upward and knows what they're getting themselves into, and was managed to work for Marinakis and leave on good terms. The value of that, I think, is tremendously high. So I would go all out for him. If we can't get him now, then I think a Dyche, you know, we can say that he doesn't like the length of the contract. I'm sure there's a number, a financial number that would make him look past that and come in till the end of the season and steady the ship and ensure that we don't get relegated. Mancini worries me massively. I think he's a roll of the dice manager, and we're not in the position. We don't have the luxury of rolling the dice on this appointment. Like it's got to go right, and there's just a ton of risk with Mancini. He's been out of the Premier League for over a decade. He's been out of club management for 6 or 7 years. His last job was Saudi Arabia. The last club job was, I think, Zenit, and that didn't go well. And that's a big red flag for me, Mancini. So Dyche or Silva, I'd be delighted with. Dyche, I'd be accepting of. Mancini, I'd be terrified.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm the same when it comes to Mancini. As soon as that name was mentioned, to me, it just smacked of another big name to come in, and it just didn't feel like the right fit for Forest. I mean, again, you know, just in a knee-jerk instinct reaction. Colin Robinson is asking, can we approach Silva if Fulham refuse contact? Well, if there is a release clause, the way to do it would be to go to Fulham and say that we understand there's a release clause. I think it's been well documented. We are interested in we want to release him. We want to activate it. And I think at that point, they would be duty bound, I imagine, to allow a conversation to happen. My gut feeling is that through intermediaries and so on, that the conversations are already happening. You know, that's already going on. So I don't think they're going to approach Fulham unless they're sure that, you know, there's going to be a deal to be had. Sean Dyche, well, if it's not now, I think it's never when it comes to Dyche for Forest. I think, and you know, he's not, he doesn't have a right to the job, but just to say that I think he definitely wants it. So I'm going to chip in with where I'm at before I come to Steve. No to Mancini. Dyche, for all the reasons that everybody's thinking, I'm in favour of. I understand that he still wants to put value on himself and say, well, look, if you want me to come and be your manager, you know, I'm not your guy to come in and just fix things and then you discard me end of the season. If I'm coming in and I want a decent contract, and I think anybody has the right to say that, you know. So if the deal is there to be made with Dyche, and I think someone mentioned it earlier, if Marinakis really wanted Dyche's first choice, the deal would be done. They'd given him the 2-year deal or whatever it would be, get him through the door. When it comes to Marco Silva, I've already stated here that I just was a little bit not sure about him. I put that question on X, which a lot of people chipped in with, Pete Blackburn especially. Thank you, Pete. Made things really clear on him. And, you know, I wouldn't be against Marco Silva coming into Forest for the reasons that Jamie just laid out about style of play, that link or that stylistic link to maybe how Nuno might approach things. So yeah, I can see that working potentially. But, you know, the name that I will mention is Iraola at Bournemouth. And I know that everyone's thinking he ain't coming. But I'm in a completely different headspace to all of you. I don't understand why you think he wouldn't come. I just don't. I see it so differently. Maybe because I'm a recruiter. Maybe because I work in recruitment and I used to recruiting people. My view is that, yes, I know Bournemouth are doing well and I know that he's got a good thing going on there. And some might say, well, he's on the Man City shortlist. Well, I don't know about that. I haven't seen the Man City shortlist. If any of you have seen the Man City shortlist, I doubt that, for starters. There may well be clubs that are looking at him and thinking, yeah, he's doing really, really well. But it's a bloody big step up to go from a Bournemouth to a Man City, to go from a Bournemouth to a Liverpool, and so on. Now, Thomas Frank at Brentford, yeah, the step up in the right kind of way was a Spurs. But even he had never managed anywhere else apart from Brentford. And he'd done an okay job with Brentford in the same kind of vein as what maybe Iraola has done at Bournemouth, although Iraola is probably, even a step above that. We're 10 times the club that Bournemouth are, with 10 times the fan base. If the right approach was made to Bournemouth for Iraola and the package was made and we paid him the money that he felt he would be earned, I cannot believe that he wouldn't at least have a conversation. So for anyone out there saying, oh, he's not going to come to Forest, why is everyone doing Forest down so badly? I don't understand it. Nottingham Forest is a massive, massive football club and a massive, massive proposition. Alan Shearer said at Match of the Day, the queue would be a mile long. And I'm telling you now, Iraola would be in that queue if the package was right. We've still got Europa League football. It has been an absolute shit show since back in August when the whole Nuno's thing broke. Yeah, there's been things going on at the club. So yes, I hold my hands up. That might be something to put him off. He might not want to come because you know what? Under normal circumstances, yeah. But at the moment, you guys are in a little bit of a mess. So I accept that might be something to put him off or put others off, potentially. But I don't think it's a huge factor when you get the big man doing what the big man does. And if the big man's making a play for someone and he's got this ambition that we keep talking about, I always think if you are ambitious, fucking be ambitious and don't piss about. Go and get the big fish. If you've got big ambition, get the big fucking fish. That's where I'm at with Iraola. He's the standout candidate. He's staring you in the face. Why is nobody approaching Iraola? Steve Battlemuch, what do you think?
Greg, I love your passion, man, but I mean, it doesn't take anything for me to want to do Bournemouth down, a club that called off a game because a tile came off their roof, But I think he's going to hang out and hold on for Man City or Man U or something like that. And I think he'll feel with Bournemouth sitting third in the league, if he could get Bournemouth into Europe as a club their size, he'll probably think, that he's got unfinished business. And who knows? The thing about Forest is who knows what approaches we've made to various people because, there's so much smoke and mirrors. I've just read a tweet that said Mancini's now out of the running. Now, whether that's true or not, you never quite tell with these people. But, I mean, to me, it's about who can start tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. I know that sounds crass, but we're playing Porto on Thursday. We're playing Bournemouth next Sunday. I know one person will start tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. It'd be Sean Dyche. He'd walk over glass to get there to the training ground tomorrow morning. I, like most other people, would say if we can get Silva, great. But I don't think we're going to get him for this week or next week. I don't think negotiations with Fulham are that straightforward. You don't know exactly that Silva definitely wants to come. You know that Fulham would want to extract every last penny and the big man would probably want to have a negotiation that would drag on. Therefore, you're into a caretaker manager. You talk about Andy Reid then taking the team into Porto and Bournemouth away. So, if it was down to me, if I was signing the checks, I would get Dyche in. I would have got him in. Well, I'd have got him in after Michelin, to be honest. And certainly I would have had him ready to go. As soon, he made a statement, didn't he, the big man? He sacked him while he was still at the ground. That was a statement. I mean, it was so typically Forest. But I was then expecting an appointment like at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock last night. And we're at 8 o'clock tonight. And there's still no appointment. So, we are going to go into training tomorrow morning with who's taking training, the reserve team manager. So, Dyche for me in the short term, I think he might surprise us. I don't think it's going to be necessarily sexy football, but I think with Steve Stone and Ian Woan alongside him, we put some commitment and love for the city back into the fans. I think we'd sell out the Porto game. if somebody turns around tonight and says Silver's starting tomorrow morning, I'll be dancing a jig, but I don't think it's going to happen.
My gut feeling is that if negotiations are to be had, the deal will be done quickly. I don't think it won't be dragged out. I think if the signs are there that he wants to come and there is an activation clause to be triggered, then it will happen very quickly. It can happen in the space of like less than 24 hours. So it all comes down to how far those negotiations with Silver have gone. And if he turned around tonight and said, okay, if you trigger my clause with the deal you put on the table, I'm your man, I'm coming, then it will happen very, very quickly. So it's whether or not, like we go back to the tweet here, that I'll put it back up again, that Jack Kelly said, and he's the Fulham guy, journalist, that Marinakis is apparently willing to pay the 15 million release clause. So if he's willing to pay the release clause, Richard, then it will happen quite quickly. But just quickly as well, we're going to go over an hour, guys. There's so much to talk about, and there's 5 of us. So stick around, guys. We're going to go a little bit beyond our usual hour. But Forest, when they sack Nuno, let me go back a bit. Forest have a great season under Nuno, offer him a new contract in the summer, Richard Spray. And so everyone's getting themselves ready for their European adventure with Nuno and on the piss and all that kind of stuff. It's all going to be great. And it's underlined with the new contract. So something happens at the club. We know about Edu. We know about the fallout. But Marinakis then decides he's going to sack him. Whether he's had his eye on Ange or not, has Marinakis got this wrong so badly that he's completely overstepped where Forest are as a club? Because the 2 seasons before that, we're lucky to stay in the division. We have a great season out of nowhere. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everything is rosy in the garden. It takes more than one season to really kind of claim to be a stable top 7 club, top 8 club. You've really got to kind of like play your stripes again. But he's willing to strip away Nuno, strip away everything that we've built under that style to go for this so-called better style, so-called more attacking style with Ange Postecoglou. Do we have to suck it up? I think Ross, you touched on it earlier about taking our medicine, which means actually let's just remember where we are and who we are. We're not quite ready just yet to have this high-flying manager come in because this club hasn't gone through the gears enough and gone through the chain of events enough to get there. So maybe it is a Dyche that we need. Maybe it is a Dyche that comes in. And yeah, like Bruce said, well, if he's willing enough to walk over broken glass, why is he not willing enough to take a short contract? Well, I'm not quite sure the two things are quite linked. I think, in fairness, you still want to put some respect on your brand. So with all that in mind, obviously comment on my Iraola passion as much as you guys and reject it and ridicule it as much as you want to, guys. I really, really don't mind. It's just where I'm at in terms of recruitment. I think you go for the best you think you can get. And yeah, there was more comments from Bruce. Let's go and get Pep. No, we're not going to go and get Pep, but Iraola is at Bournemouth. So we are a club that's better than Bournemouth that might be the next club in his evolution towards a top 6 club. I don't know which of the Sky Super 6 would appoint an Iraola at the moment. Richard.
Well, I think Ross probably was going to jump in on this, so please jump in, Ross, if you want and weigh in on this. I understand where you're coming from, and I think there's sort of a correlative effect with the idea that the passion, the ambition of Marinakis makes sense, but there's also a businessman in there that looks at risk and looks at prohibitive expense, right? So it's kind of like saying when we heard that that Gyökeres was on the table for Forest before the season concluded. I mean, that all sounds great. Or I mean, take your pick. Cunha. These incredibly expensive players that we just don't have the capital to support. We already went through the PSR nightmare, under Nuno, a change in manager and then subsequent points deduction. Obviously, Dyche has been through that as well, but so he'll be intimately aware of that. But I think it makes sense because you and I both were saying something similar before I think the season even started, when all this Nuno stuff started to gain traction. Ross knew, I think apparently before the rest of us, that something about the Nuno experience maybe was going to be shifting. Simply because of the fact that they were going to ask him to play a style of football, and because of his concerns about the recruitment that was supposed to support that style of football instead of his style of football, it got him a little bit angsty and frustrated, which is understandable. I think that's the same concept when it comes to Ange ball, is that you think it's just an easy plug and play scenario. Did he get it wrong? Yeah, he got it wrong. I mean, as Chris has pointed out from Forest All Over, and we mentioned this yesterday, it was an experiment. But you were trying to force a manager who doesn't play that way to play that way. Then you bring in a guy who you think can play that way, but he doubles down on playing that way in sacrifice of other things. So I don't know how many opportunities and how much conversation was had with an Areola to test the waters. But as Bennett points out in his comment, it's just a difficult situation for anyone on the outside looking in, because you know the character of Marinakis anyway. He's a great guy. He's a passionate guy. He supports the community. He does good things for us from a charity standpoint and other things, Warriors United and so on and so forth. But he also has a bit of a quick trigger, and he's got a little bit of volatility, but he's got a little bit of fire below the surface at all times, right? Just kind of waiting to kind of be unleashed. And in a lot of ways, we love that about him as fans of this club. But there's also, from someone outside looking in who doesn't have intimate knowledge of that, that looks like a situation you may not want to be a part of. And so how do you convince people who are in a stable situation to go to an unstable situation? And even if there's a lot of money involved, when, as Ross has pointed out and Bennett's pointed out, he's on the precipice potentially of another job, depending on what happens with an Amorim or someone of that nature. So I think that's a bit pie in the sky, not because I don't appreciate and love the passion that you have, Greg, but it also feels like we can say at any given moment, hey, we would like to bring in Alexander Isak, but the reality of that is just not gonna happen because it's too cost prohibitive. And I know that's an extreme example here, but I don't know. I think we have to get back to what you said and what Ross has said, which is find that DNA again. That DNA that's got us to this point, even under Clough, if I'm not mistaken, was that defensively solid, difficult, sound, technically oriented team that played with their entire heart and soul and put everything on the line throughout the course of a match. And there's just been too much of that that's sort of started to wane. And we did kind of get ahead of ourselves. No one expected to be in Europe this quickly, which is why we said, and many others have said, probably getting the Champions League last season would have been very, very hard, because one, now you're really trying to push from an expenditure standpoint to reach those heights. And you're basically saying too, I don't know if that's a Nuno type competition, because the way that those teams play in that competition are not going to be in the sort of a mode of what we do and what we had been doing. So it felt like Nuno at the end of the season, I think maybe Dan said this, Nuno at the end of the season made more sense, because then you move into potentially Champions League if you can win Europa, and then you start to transition to something. It felt like we went for a Champions League type squad before we were even ready to play Champions League type football. So, anyway, that was a very long-winded answer. I'm very sorry about that.
Not at all. Looks like we've just lost Ross briefly. Maybe he had to go. But I think it's important to point out that Sean Dyche maybe needs a little bit more credit. Anna is in the comments kind of talking about him a little bit and saying that he's still touted as a relegation avoider, a low block, Big Sam type. But he has got more strings to his bow. He did take Burnley into the Europa League. He did get them a top 7 finish, I think it was. That needs to be remembered. He did well at Everton in terms of their points deduction, and that absolute shit show that was happening at that club at that time. And I think without the points deduction, they would have had quite a respectable mid-table finish potentially. So, Jamie, where are you at when it comes to the stabilisation factor above maybe being more adventurous towards Europe factor? We like the idea of being in Europe because it's been a great thing for us to experience again as Forest fans, but it's all about the Premier League, isn't it? It's all about making sure we can maintain our Premier League status. So where are you at? Are you more like, come on, let's stabilise? If it means a Dyche for a couple of years to get us really stabilised and we go again, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, I mean, yes, is the short answer to that. I don't think we need a Dyche for a couple of years. I think this season, to the end of the season, a Dyche, or Dyche specifically, I think everyone would be happy with that. We just can't get relegated. I mean, I don't think we need champagne football as Forest fans to be happy. Like, we played some terrible football in that first season in the Prem under Cooper. And yeah, I loved it. I think we all loved it. Like, we kicked and headed every single ball with that team that season because we all felt like we were in it together and we were all connected. And that's all we really want. And that's where Ange missed the boat. Nuno didn't. Nuno saw that and he continued it. And I think that's all we're asking for, really, is someone who kind of gets it from that perspective. We don't need to be scoring goals with 20 uninterrupted passes and somebody tapping it in from the 6-yard line. Like, we don't need that. We just want passion and is to have a go. And I think Dyche would bring us that. But it's all relevant. It's all relative. Like, if you'd have said to me when Nuno left, Dyche will be your next manager, then I'd have been, well, that's a bit unambitious, because at that point we were pretty hot property, and we had this exciting season in Europe ahead of us, but things have changed. I know it's only been 8 games since then, but things have changed. We're on a downward trajectory. We've got to stop that. We've got to arrest that slide. We can't roll the dice on a Mancini or another big name who's kind of unknown or out of the loop in the Premier League. And if we can't get Marco Silva, I think, as I said, is the obvious choice, then Dyche on a shorter term contract. I mean, Andrew's only an 18-month contract, I think. So that or less would be fine with me. And then we reassess in the summer, see who's available, and see if there's someone who can kick us on to the next level. But yeah, for now, we've got to make sure that we stop this slide. I'd be happy with a lower mid-table finish under Sean Dyche. That would be fine with me at this point.
For me, the whole reason that we were successful last season was that we had an identity. And as Richard just touched on, I talked about that DNA, that identity that Nuno gave us in terms of style of play and who we are as a club. And I also believe that the identity factor came from the players. Definitely from Ola, Aina, Callum and Elanga last season, that tricky trio, that we haven't had any of that this season, and by God, we've missed that. I know Ola's been injured. They've started to get a few more videos coming out of him with his birthday and stuff like that, but we definitely need some more Ola, Aina treatment, because there's been a turnover in players. Ange coming in, there was no connection with the fans. It just didn't happen. So, Ross, how important is it for you that we get that identity back from the likes of a Sean Dyche, who knows the club so intrinsically, we are told? I mean, I kind of poo-pooed him a little bit an episode or two ago when I said I've never known a person more linked with Forest who never actually played for the club. But maybe I was just being a little bit kind of unfair to him. I know that he came through the academy and so on. But, he comes with Stone and Wone, and the feel-good factor would be back. The PR would be fantastic. The fans would be loving it. And it would just take a win or two, it feels, and would be back on track, do you think?
Yeah, we need to win some football matches, whoever it is. That's job one.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, the two is going to be great.
That's the problem. And the problem that Ange had post this window was, the international break, was he basically had to win 3 on the spin and to get anyone back on side. So we need to get some points on the board to just ease the tension, baby, so to speak. Greg, I love you, and I commend your passion for and belief that we deserve bigger things. I have to say there's a little bit of Garibaldi tinted glasses in your approach if you think Areola is going to leave, because he's got Spanish options on the table too. So not just Premier League, but I think Dyche has to come in and recognise the fact that the predicament we're in requires a certain style of football. I think he'll do that. I think we also have to just be a little wary that not all of the children of Clough have been successful. See previous Stuart Pearce, Martin O'Neill, and a few others. So yes, we all want to hang on to that. And yes, the Stone Wone love-in will obviously help. But ultimately, and Benitez made it and a few others in the comments, our players need to step up. Our players have been underperforming, and whoever can drive that is the most important thing. I think the fans recognise that there is an uplift that needs to be brought across the board. Dyche will get the movie in terms of bringing the fans along with him, and that's why I'm kind of on side for him.
Steve, which players would benefit most from Sean Dyche? Chris Wood's the obvious name, but arm around the shoulder, kind of that gruff kind of like personality. Is he the, I mean, I know you said you'd like him to start tomorrow morning, but that kind of personality that he's got, just on the face of it, seems like the perfect fit.
Yeah, I think the thing about this short-term contract thing is it's a bit insulting to him, really, to say, "Oh, we just want you till next May, and then we'll try somebody better." I think you've got to give him at least 2 years, and then what happens is, if it fails, you know he's going to be gone at the end of the season. But if he keeps us up and we have a good run in the Europa League, he'll probably deserve an extension. So it'll be one of those 1 year plus a 1 year option thing is what I'd do. And the thing is, he will put his arm around a number of those senior players and he'll get them playing again. Watch that YouTube video of him on the overlap or whatever it's called with Gary Neville and Paul Scholes. It's a really interesting interview about what he's done since he's been out of work with Everton, where he's been, what he's been going around doing, but also about his style. Ryan Yates, I know we've got better midfield players, but somebody like Yatesy would thrive under Dyche, even if he's only coming on for 10 minutes at the end of a game to shore it up. You know, Yates will go, and we should say here now, Yates going out and doing that interview when he wasn't even on the pitch and fronting up for the club just shows what Ryan Yates is about.
Well, he's the club captain, Steve.
He is the club captain.
I'm sorry, but I expect nothing. I expect nothing less. I know people have said that, and I agree with you. I respect Ryan Yates, but he's the club captain. I expect nothing less.
Yeah, and I'm glad he went out and did it, but I'm not sure if anybody else. Well,
it was his job. That's why he's the club captain.
I know, but Morgan was captain on the day. I'm not sure.
No, that's but neither here nor there. Yeah. Ryan Yates is the club captain. He's the spokesman for that group, the first spokesman for that group. Whether he's on the pitch or not, he's the first spokesman. Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah, he went out and he fronted up, but who else would have done it? There's no one else. It's his job to do that.
Yeah. But I think Dyche will get us working. I think we'd be using wingers to get balls into the box, whether that is then Wood on the end of him, Jesus, Calamaro, whoever it is. I think we will get, we will see a more identity Forest come out of the next few months and give us a fighting chance in Europe. It'll give us a fighting chance again in the Premier League. And it'll just give us something that we can get started on this week. And that to me is crucial. I've said it before, like a stuck record, but I don't want this to drag on for another 2 or 3 weeks while we work out who's going to come.
No. Sean's You Red says Dyche is the last person we want at Forest talking total rubbish. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way. We're talking about the hot topic, which is the next Nottingham Forest manager, and Sean Dyche is the bookie's favourite. So I'm not quite sure who you expect us to talk about. But, thank you for sharing your comment. Paul says Dyche is who you get to save you from relegation. It's still early. We can do better than that. Pat Brett is also no to Dyche. Colo thinks Nico should be club captain. Yatesy hardly gets a game. Well, that's why he's club captain, because the club captain is the senior player who's been there the longest. I think Ryan Yates is never going to not be the club captain personally. They're not going to take that off him whilst he's still at the club. Oh, all right, and breathe. Thank you so much to my panel and for Richard for hopping on after we thought he wouldn't quite make it, but he got here. Thank you for joining us in the comments. Please do go ahead, hit like and subscribe, and come back and witness more heated debate, passionate ramblings about managers that will never come to Nottingham Forest. Come back and hear us talk about low block football and high possession football and Australians that don't like us anymore. We've got lots that we'd like to continue to discuss in our next episode, which will be the preview for Porto coming out on Tuesday. But we are out of time, but I want to give each of my panel members and guests a chance to give us some final thoughts. Jamie, it's been a real pleasure to have you back on Talking Reds, and I hope you'll come back again. Anything you want to quickly add that we haven't got out of you so far?
I think this is all it's just sad, isn't it, that we're at this point. I think when you look back over the history of the club, this will be one of the biggest unforced errors we've ever done to ourselves the last 3 months. It didn't need to happen, and the ramifications of it might be felt for a long time. And it's a shame. It really is.
It is indeed. Ross?
First up, Richard, have a great trip back to the motherland. Enjoy the game. I'm very jealous. I'm going to hold to my sentiment that I texted an Everton buddy about a month ago, which was all I want for Christmas is Dyche, and I'm going to hold to that.
Fantastic. Steve Battlemuch, how was your Australian gig?
Yeah, I enjoyed the sparring with the Australian news a bit ago. I think I held our end up.
Were they going all in for batting for Ange a bit?
They said two questions. Did we give him enough time, and will he get another job anywhere else? I said not in the Premier League this year for sure. To me,
Again, I think.
the message for me for this week is let's get those rest of those tickets for Porto sold. Let's get behind whoever comes in. We've got to put behind, whether it's Dyche or Silva or whoever it is comes in now, get behind them, get the City Ground rocking again. No boos, no cap whistles, turn up the volume and let's just get that feel-good factor back at the City Ground.
Thank you very much to you three. My co-host, Richard Spray. Anything you want to add, buddy?
Well, I would say, I appreciate Anna's comments and definitely looking forward to being over there. It's always a great time to return to the motherland, as Ross said, and the home of my family, place that they're passionate about and they love immensely. My mother's born in West Bridgford. She's lived and breathed Forest, whether she liked it or not, from my granddad, since the moment she could, came into existence. So, and I've kind of had the same experience, and it's been an absolute blessing and gift. So we've seen darker days, right, boys? We've seen more difficult times, and we've weathered those storms. We found our way back through it, and so I genuinely believe it will happen. That's always been a mantra for our club, believe. And don't be stupid enough to write us off. I've got to work on my East Midlands, Nottinghamshire accent to really make that authentic when I say that. But really appreciate just yesterday it was really cool. My son and I were watching the match, and I mentioned this on our pod yesterday, but I think it bears repeating. When everything seemed like it just still wasn't working and it was an inevitable loss, you had people in that stadium just chanting away with their entire soul to back them. If they're not doing it for Ange, they're doing it because of how much they love Nottingham Forest. And I think that's really commendable. I've been to a lot of sporting events in other countries and in different forms of sport, and I've never seen the passion I see in football fans, and especially at a club like ours. And that's really cool to witness. And, so it feels like everybody still has the same centralized purpose, which is to see our club be successful again. And I'm really appreciative of that we get to witness it. But my son was like, wow, they're still cheering for her dad, and they're not even playing well at all. And I said, I know, but that's just Nottingham Forest fans for you right there. If you can encapsulate that and bottle that up, boy, we'd all be, living a better life, I think, in some ways. So I'm all in. You Reds, Betty. We're going to get back to playing the way that we need to play, and we're going to win games again. I genuinely believe that.
The experiment is over, and we move on as a club, as a fan base. And like Steve says, hopefully the appointment can be made swiftly. If it's not tomorrow morning, hopefully it's within the next day or two. Everyone will be keeping their eyes on social media for news, listening to pundits to try and get a gauge on where things are. There is a game coming up in the Europa League on Thursday night. We hope the new manager is in post for that. It may well be that caretakers have to step in, but whoever leads the team on Thursday, Richard is right. We as fan base, we will get behind them. And when it comes to the next manager, well, who is it going to be? Is the next manager going to be silver-plated, or is it time to roll the dice?
Come join Greg and Richard right here on top.